We now start the second part of the program. We have two panelists for the panel discussion, Education Cooperation with Africa, Roles of EDU-Port, Japan. I would like to introduce who's on stage. In the middle, we have Professor Kan Suzuki, Graduate School of Public Policy, the University of Tokyo, Professor Yuto Kitamura, Graduate School of Education, the University of Tokyo. And then we have Mr. Taro Kumada from Casio, Ms. Yuri Narita from Yamaha, and Tomoko Fujihira from Surara.net, Mr. Hitoshi Tanabe, Osaka Prefectural Johto Technological High School, Mr. Shoichi Yanagisawa from Fukui University, Mr. Kentaro Miyoshi, Kumon, and Ms. Moi Kumada from EDU-Mo. Professor Suzuki and Professor Kimura actually have provided a lot of insight for this project as a part of the expert panel for EDU-Port, Japan. Now I would like to hand over to Professor Suzuki. Yes, this is Suzuki. I would like to thank all the presenters for their wonderful talks. Since we have TCAD in this fiscal year, we want to talk about educational cooperation with Africa, roles of EDU-Port, Japan. So you heard about Egypt, Uganda, and Senegal initiatives so far. Professor Kitamura, what did you think about all of the presentations? EDU-Port initiative has been going on for about a decade, and I really felt that it has wonderful programs, implementation of education, Japan products and services from Japan. I think really leveraging on this strength and also providing something that is in line with the context locally. We can see that in all of the examples. I just want to emphasize that these initiatives are not being done because Japan is superior. That is not the case. It's all about great partnership for some really great local advancement. For example, we heard from Fukui University. The global trend is actually happening in these different countries, and Japan has the opportunity to think along in line with what is happening. So we're not trying to teach something from Japan. We are trying to work together as peers. I think that fact was really highlighted through these presentations. Another thing that I would like to say is that from the MEX's perspective, this initiative is very unique. Unlike any other, such strong collaboration between public and private. I have never really seen this kind of example within the Ministry of Education initiatives. Because in the field of education, people tend to shy away from talking about making money, being profitable. But in the private sector, companies need to be profitable in order to continue to exist. But these projects do not necessarily start with a profit in mind, but if the project continues to go strongly, of course, you need to see profit generated from these projects as well. And that should also be supported. So the initial objective is not making money, but we don't have to deny the possibility of making money either. I was very impressed by what I heard today. I just wanted to highlight those 2 points to begin with. Thank you. On a personal note, in 2016, Mr. Abe and the President of Egypt signed an agreement. I was working in MEXT. And then we received a delegation from Egypt. And JICA asked us to explain the Tokkatsu program. And we did that in the lecture room at JICA. And that was followed by many rounds of discussions. I remember receiving really sharp questions from the audience at the time. So approximately 10 years have passed since then. And we had pandemic, actually, during that decade. Despite the pandemic, we now still have this wonderful initiative with Egypt. Really great substance and also impactful scale, including teachers training and also industrial education and music education, maths, so many different areas. Many programs are implemented in parallel. And the initiative is called EDU-Port, and port, the actual physical port, both ships out and receives goods, which is truly what is happening between Egypt and Japan. We have a strong exchange among not only the teachers, but also the students, pupils as well. And it really reminds me how happy I am to be a part of this. I have also worked with Ashinaga team members too. I have communicated with some of the graduates who are in Japan now. And I learned some new things about these programs in Uganda and other places. I was a vice minister at the time of the Fukushima earthquake, so I visited Fukushima frequently. And now Fukushima and Senegal are connected through this initiative. I would like to express my heartfelt respect and gratitude to all the people who are making this possible. Well, I think you only had 10 minutes each for your presentation. You were very conscious about the time limitation, so maybe I can ask some additional questions. Now, TCAT will be held in summer this year in Yokohama. And implementation in Africa is going to be very important, including the educational aspects. So I would like to ask the private company representatives first. You have been conducting your business in Egypt and other African countries. What are some of the challenges, and how do you intend to overcome those challenges? And you are all certified with EDU-Port Japan. How effective or helpful was that in your endeavor? So that's the first thing that I would like to ask you to share first. Casio, Yamaha, Suralanet, Kumon, and Edumo, in this order. Let's go around the panel. Starting with Casio. Yes, this is Kumada. Casio, thank you for your question. Professor Kitamura commented that in the private sector, we need to do this as business. So it's very important to strike the right balance. And Mr. Kitayama from MEXT and Professor Kitamura mentioned this. We accept that, and we know that EDU-Port was created in the first place with this kind of aspect in mind. So we're not just trying to make it look good. We can actually do business, which we appreciate.
So not only in Egypt and in Africa, I think in terms of the access to educational system, I think it's not easy for us to have access to education institutions, schools, because we're foreigners, especially coming from Japan, and access to those educational institutions in foreign countries is a bit of a challenge. But since we are a certified program by EDU-Port, and we are backed by the Ministry of Education of Japan, this is a really authentic project, government-sanctioned project. So that's why that makes us easier to have access to those institutions, access to government officials. It's sort of a guarantee provided by the Japanese government to have access to those resources, because otherwise we would be regarded as a merchant selling something to those schools. So I think we are making very good use of this framework, this platform. That's it from me. Thank you. Yamaha. Okay, I'm Narita from Yamaha. So as a private company in Japan, EDU-Port provided us great support in terms of granting us access to educational institutions in countries where we operate. First, we have to have access to the government officials, and we always had support from the Japanese government officials or embassies. And as we worked on the project, sometimes it is quite difficult to set up meetings with the government officials in the countries where we operate. But through the support we have from the government, we could do that. Thank you. So Yamaha, I think you have been operating in other regions as well, beyond Africa. Is there any particular challenge you face beyond the African continent? Well, it was, quite difficult for us to engage with government officials in other countries, and that's something similar to Africa, not only to Africa. Okay, Sorella Net. Thank you. So from my experience, we have been working in Egypt for 3 years. And wherever we go, I think we should have a success story in a particular country where we operate. Otherwise, the people in the country would not listen to us. And that's something we actually feel quite strongly when we operate in Cambodia. We have success stories in other countries, but that they're not actually related to those countries, other countries' success stories. So we have to bring in success stories that are tailored to that particular country where we operate. So we have to have successes, and then we can start off, we can lay the foundation. And I think it takes a long time to get to that point. Maybe 3 years is not so much, it's not so long from a certain perspective, but from a private company, from a very small business like us, 3 years is a very long time period, a lead time. And I think beyond the operation in Asian region, I think Africa is such a distant region. It takes money, it takes time. And for a small company like us, it is challenging for us to continue our activity in a remote area. We are dealing with digital content, and the access to internet speed is very important. But not only that, we want to prefer using online communication, even with those for meetings with with government officials. And during the pandemic, it was okay to have just online meetings because there was no option. But after pandemic, they really wanted us to be there in person, especially in talking with teachers. Because, we didn't have meaningful conversation online because the internet connection is so bad. So, once we go there, we have a productive discussion. But when we come back to Japan through online communication, there's no sort of meaningful discussion after that. So we really have to be there. And if we have money to do that, it's, of course, better. But it takes time to get to that point. And that's one of the challenges we always face. And also, because our project is part of EDU-Port program, as many of you noted, even a small company like us, private company like us, we have access to powerful government officials. They have some confidence in us because we are backed by the government and by JICA, and also by the Ministry of Economy in Japan. We have some projects in cooperation with the Ministry of Economy. But with the backing of the Ministry of Education in Japan, that's a very significant support. And we are making very good use of that. Okay, thank you very much. Kumon. Well, one of the challenges is that we have to make partnership with the local organization, but finding a suitable partner is a challenge. And we have to be on the same page with regards to our vision and our business model. And in order to have access to that local organization, local company, I think we need to have introduction from the government, from the Ministry of Education, for example. And when we the first step will be the fact that we have a backing from the government of Japan as a project part of the EDU-Port program. And we have some. There are set curriculum programs, and we have to provide something that will supplement their program. We shouldn't be competitive with their programs. And so that's one of the ways that will make us easier to have access to them. And also, we have to make it as sustainable. And as a private company, we have to make decisions whether we're going to continue to do this or whether we're going to exit. Maybe we earn some profits, and if there is a sort of a virtuous cycle that we earn profits and we provide the money, we use the money to start a new program, and that's something that we're going to do in Bangladesh. Okay, thank you. Idimo? So we are operating in Senegal, and one of the big challenges is that language barrier. In Senegal, they have a local language, and the second language is French. English is their third language. So we communicate in English, but sometimes we're lost in translation. So it's quite difficult to overcome this language barrier. And another challenge is that some of them has never seen a tablet device. So there's some gap in digital literacy. Nyan, someone I introduced during my presentation, he actually brought back some tablet devices and showed them how to use them for school children in Senegal. And the third challenge is that we're not making profit yet. So we have to provide more support so that we can develop companies, we can make profits, and also we also want to make profits as well. And as part of EDU-Port program, and we have the backing, and we are a beneficiary of the backing. Our company's name is on the website, and we have some inquiry from India and Myanmar. So there's a good publicity. And one of the advantages we have is that we don't have to procure expensive devices. It's online, and actually we have some foundations that we can expand our activities overseas.
Next, I would like to ask the representatives of the educational institutions. So exchange between students and also learning among teachers are promoted between different countries. So similar question, what are the challenges, and what are you doing to overcome those challenges? And being certified as EDU-Port project, how beneficial is that? We'll start with Osaka Prefectural Jodo Technology High School. Yes, I'm Tanabe. Thank you. I just presented to you. With regard to challenges, we have international exchange program with South Korea as well in our school. Our school is dedicated to technology. Telecommunication based on the latest technology, of course, has to be taught by the teachers to the students. And we believe that this is one of our strengths. We have acquired a very strong tool because of the pandemic. Earlier, somebody else said about the telecommunication problem with Egypt, but Egypt also has teachers who are technology specialists, so we have never really had a big problem in that sense. Sometimes, yes, there are minor problems, but we always successfully get connected and communicate with each other. We want to continue to use this communication tool. Talking about the EDU-Port support or certification, CEOs and also teachers in schools, professors in universities, we have connections with those types of people. But we never had any connections with, in terms of internal exchange. And we had to find somebody to pre-teach the people about Egypt, and we asked EDU-Port to help us, and they found somebody for us, and I introduced that person. It was a Japanese person talking about how great Egypt is, and that made the international exchange program for this year extremely exciting, so we really appreciated that support from EDU-Port. Thank you. Let's move on to Fukui University. What we found most challenging was the organizational problem in Japan, because training in Japan is done by the individuals or the research teams. This kind of frequent program, large-size program, doesn't really exist in Japan, or did not exist in Japan. And it was very clear that we could not just line up the different pieces one after the other. We needed a system to support the whole program. I believe that the Japanese teacher training institutions have the capacity to be able to do that, but right now it is done on an individual by individual basis. But Fukui University decided to implement this program. There was no rule, there was a lot of conflict. But once we have full-scale implementation of the program, I think that would enhance our ability to collaborate. We have already seen great results come out of the program through the collaboration with Egypt. So Ministry of Education should take this more seriously and not think of it as something that was tasked by the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, and tackle the problem that exists within the Japanese educational system or the training system. Thank you. Session 1 included a presentation by JICA and the Embassy of Egypt. Japan-style education in Africa, EDU-Port program in Africa. We need to collaborate among the different parts of the government as well as the counterpart. Can you please comment on this? African continent includes many different varied countries, and I don't want to sound presumptuous, but especially for the basic education, educational quality improvement is important. It's not just about acquiring knowledge and skill. We want to introduce holistic approach, as the Professor Saka mentioned. Quality of education has always been assessed from multiple aspects in Japan, and it's actually useful outside of the country as well, as you could see in the example of Egypt. Considering the global trend, non-cognitive skill is becoming more important. It is also very topical in Africa. So what do we need to do in order to tackle these issues? I'm very impressed that JICA is extending quite a lot of support. But I want to see more involvement by the Board of Education in Japan at the prefectural level or the level of municipality, towns and villages. Board of Education is quite contentious. I have been serving at the board for about 8 years in Tokyo. There are many international programs being implemented so that we can nurture and develop more international human resources, but this is mostly happening within Tokyo metropolitan area. And collaboration between public and private is not as dynamic as we see in EDU-Port. Board of Education has a lot of potential to collaborate with you, to give you access to new channels as members engaged in EDU-Port. And the counterpart countries could also take advantage of that new channel. They can get more information about the initiatives taking place in Japan. And also through accessing this new channel, new type of learning can be delivered to the children in Japan as well. So I have always believed that we need to involve the Board of Education further, deeper. Ministry of Education has many projects that are relevant to EDU-Port as well. Ministry of Economy also has classroom-related activities which are not necessarily connected to what Ministry of Education is doing. So we need to remove the silo and see more collaboration among the different ministries as well. Thank you. Now we would like to start accepting questions. We have received 2 questions from our online participants. So we will do those first and then ask the audience to raise hand and ask questions. First of all, with regard to science and mathematics education, challenges and initiatives, can you please cite some of those? That is the first question. And I'm supposed to start working at the Japanese school in Cairo from April. Is there anything I can do to prepare for that? What would be the outlook? So let's start with Kumada-san from EDU-Port. Please choose the question, the first one or the second question, and respond to that.
So Kumada-san from EDU-Port, please. So we're not operating in Egypt, so it's quite difficult for me to answer either of the questions. But, well, within the context that we're operating in the African continent, when we look at the African children are vastly different from Japanese children. For example, they are very much more enthusiastic about education, about learning than Japanese school children. They put 120% of their efforts to learn something. So, teaching is something that you can enjoy when you go there. And I don't see any negative sort of feedback or comment coming from Japanese teachers teaching in Egyptian elementary schools. What about Kumon, from the perspective of Kumon? Okay, so I'm going to take the first question, STEM education. So we've been in Namibia and we've been serving school children in African continent. So arithmetic before going into math, I think students need to have practice, a lot of practice, a lot of familiarization. And there are many school children not focused on the learning itself. So for every child, every pupil, they really need to have the system where they can focus, concentrate on their own learning. And that should be part of the STEM education going forward. So first, we have to overcome the first challenge, first step. Getting focused on that. Okay, thank you. From Fukui University, any comment? So Egyptian teachers, parents, they're really interested in the Japanese style education. So I really recommend that person to interact with Egyptian counterparts. With regards to STEM education, I think there's some familiarity with what we do with regards to manufacturing education, but I'm actually not an expert on STEM education, so let me refrain from going into details. And although I've never been to Egypt, when I observe our students interacting with Egyptian students, when it comes to technology learning, technical learning, they also talked about other things like Japanese anime, Captain Tsubasa, football or cartoon, and both high school students and share the same sort of hobby interest. So you don't have to be sort of preparing so much. I think you can feel relaxed and get there and go with the flow. So Egyptian high school students are really into Japanese comics and anime, right? Yes. Captain Tsubasa, One Piece, or food. food is one of the hottest topics among them. Egyptian students are really interested in Japanese food, and our students showed them udon, Japanese noodles, and they had so many questions about that. Okay, how about Sarala Net? About answering the question about STEM education, or one teacher is now assigned to teach Japanese school in Egypt. So wherever we go, when it comes to calculation, school children are using their fingers. And when the teachers saw their gestures, all of them started to nod. So the arithmetic education in the primary education in Japan is something that we should be proud of. For example, in India, I saw the highest level textbook of arithmetic or math. And when you see roundup, textbooks do not actually teach in details. So one of the top of the only the top school teachers can teach about rounding up. So I think it is quite critical to help students overcome the first challenges they face in the primary education setting. So without basic academic ability skills, there's no way to go. So the basic foundational academic skills is something that is really difficult to teach to students. And when I do interview with high school teachers or junior high school teachers in Japan, they always say the same thing. It is difficult to teach the basics to school children. So I think that's one of the strengths that we have in our Japanese education system, writing, calculating, and that opens up so much possibilities for school children across the world. Okay, Yamahai, any comment, feedback? So I like to give one advice to one teacher assigned to teach Japanese school in Egypt. So we have music education in Egypt, and I really want that person to explore the possibilities of further music education exchanges in Egypt. Cassio? So I'd like to answer the question with regards to STEM education. We have one staff who used to be teaching in Thailand. Sorry, no, I'm talking about Cairo, not Thailand. Sorry, my pronunciation was bad. Okay, so changing the topic. So I'd like to answer the question about STEM education. So I think one of the big advantages that we have and that we should be proud of in Japanese primary education is that the quality of the materials, textbooks. So I think we should involve more textbook publishers in terms of STEM education to improve the quality of STEM education. And I think we should play a bigger part in that. Okay, thank you very much, everyone. So we have done with the questions coming from online. So now the floor is yours. Anybody who have a question, please raise your hand, and you should be speaking to the microphone. And please state your name and to whom your question is addressed. Okay, thank you very much for taking my question. My name is Sato, Africa Business Association. So I have a question to a person from Kumon. So you have the program in Africa. You have Botswana, Kenya, Namibia, South Africa, and Botswana, Namibia. So when you choose a country where you operate, you have a democratization index, you should look at how the level of democracy in that country. And in each country you've chosen to be there, I think each country has a certain level of democratization. I think, is that one of the criteria when you select the country you're going to operate in? And when you expand the Japanese-style education in Africa, I think as a result, as an outcome, I hope that the message of democracy will spread in the country where you operate, and I have high expectations for that as well. Okay. So where we operate, there's 5 countries. Basically, those people who are actually living in those countries, they like to open up Kumon classrooms. And we, of course, should deal with the many problems with regards to trademark and location, safety, etc. So, and we have a partner in the country, and first we have to talk with them. So we have been working with our partners in those countries where we operate, and we are dealing with a lot of government officials, and we have cooperation from those government officials. And of course, English is a big part of that as well.
Thank you. Any other questions? I see a hand up over there. My name is Charlie Nishimura from Yonemura Denjiro. We do scientific shows using products that we find at home to heighten children's interest. EDU-Port Japan, when you adopt it, how do you utilize that? STEM education supplementation program. I've been working on that with Botswana embassy representatives. So we provide lecture about experiments to the local teachers, and the teachers show these experiments to the local children. They get interested, and this is how we get children love STEM. And we are working directly with the embassy. And you mentioned that usually it's difficult to access the Ministry of Education of each country, but when you have a EDU-Port certificate, it's easier. Does that mean that the Ministry of Education in Japan introduces us to the Ministry of Education of another country? Or do you write that in your documentation to explain? And what is an effective way of communicating this government support? Anyone? Yes, this is Kumada speaking. After the project adoption, when we approach the local Ministry of Education, sometimes we get support from the embassy. Ministry of Education can produce an official letter explaining the significance of this project when we are introduced. It's not a single step. We have to work with consultants. We have to work with people who have connections. But if you have EDU-Port certification, then that will increase your probability of success. So you work with a local Japanese embassy first. Yes, that's correct. Any other comments? Thank you for your question. EDU-Port letter. Before we receive that letter, we have to think about what kind of value we can provide in that country. Without providing value, letter from EDU-Port doesn't really mean much. And also, So after going through all the process and the counterpart is still wondering whether you can be trusted, maybe you can use the letter from EDU-Port saying that you can be trusted. I don't think it's an almighty panacea for every situation. I think that made the story quite clear. Any other comments? Yes, from the private sector. I have never really used the EDU-Port adoption or certification as some kind of authority to get things done. I visit schools all the time, almost every day. And they think that I come from Japan. Our company provides digital teaching material, which is not familiar to them. And when I say that we actually work with Ministry of Education in Japan, that can work as a hook to get them interested. So I'm not really substantiating my claim with a lot of data. I just show the logo of EDU-Port for the competition, for example, saying that we are supported by EDU-Port. But EDU-Port on its own doesn't resonate very strongly, so I have to say this is run by Ministry of Education. So it helps you gain access at the school level. I can say for certain. Okay, what about high school or university level? What about Yamaha? Maybe not in Egypt, but you are trying to incorporate music into the national curriculum, correct? Yes, that's our activity in Vietnam. When the MOU was signed with the local Ministry of Education, person from the Japanese Ministry of Education joined the signing ceremony, which increases the people's confidence in us. Thank you. Yes, next question, please. My name is Matsuno from Nagoya Economic University. We heard about specific examples of how these programs contribute to well-being, and I have also learned about how EDU-Port works. Thank you. By collaborating with educational institutions and NGOs and corporations and governments, I understand that you can do more than trying to do something on your own. I visited the Embassy of Jordan and also the immigrants camp in Jordan. And this year I was involved in a project to support the children. But there is a problem. Although we have this experience of implementing the project on the ground, sometimes I feel a distance between us and the local people who are engaged in the project. EDU-Port has a big potential for the future. In order to expand this further in educational program, what can we do? Do you have any suggestions? To whom are you addressing the question? We don't have a lot of time, so maybe you can pick one or two panelists. I would like to ask the professors. Yes, Fukui University. I basically agree with what you're saying. Japanese education has grown over time, but unless it is seen by a third eye, you cannot really understand what Japanese education can do. So I talked about the mirror in my presentation. It is actually quite powerful to have a mirror like Egypt showing Japan what it has done. Thank you. I believe that we only have 3 minutes to go. Professor Kitamura talked about the role of EDU-Port. Would you like to talk about EDU-Port's role in collaboration with Africa? We say Africa, but all the different countries within the African continent are vastly different from each other. We need to involve experts with high-level skill. We also need to focus on vocational training, secondary school, and also elementary school. I think we need to reorganize all these aspects once again so we can implement this more strategically. Egypt is an interesting example. Professor Saka mentioned that it started with a support to the university, just, and then expanded. This is one approach. In other countries, maybe it can start from the primary education and expand to higher levels. There is still a lot of confusion. We have a different relationship with different countries. Strategy will have to be formulated with the involvement of JICA. And it's not just EDU-Port. There are many other projects out there as well, and they all need to be positioned strategically, correctly. Several years ago, UNESCO produced a report saying that what to continue, what to discontinue, and what to change it with innovation. We need to think all of these three aspects in terms of education globally. In Japan, in the counterpart country, what do we want to maintain, what do we want to discontinue, and what do we want to transform? We want to think about these aspects.
And then there's one more thing that I like to talk about. So when we talk about Japanese schools in overseas, so Japanese schools are not something that's sanctioned by the Japanese government or supported by the Japanese government. Local people gather resources. Of course, Minister of Education send teachers to those locations. But, well, there are some Japanese schools which have big resources where many Japanese are there. But most of Japanese schools are underfunded, suffering from lack of resources. There are many Japanese schools like that. So when you find those schools, please come up with something to support those Japanese schools. Maybe I shouldn't be saying that, but a lot of details or the true sort of picture of Japanese schools is not very much known to us. And, we have been doing this for 10 years, so we'd like to expand activities going forward with your support. So when it comes to Africa, I want to say one thing. I went to Kenya last year. You can make payments using your smartphone, no cash. You can buy anything with your smartphone. And that's the trend in the world. And they are also suffering from a shortage of teachers. And that's pretty much the same issue across the world. And then we have to think about the impact of digital transformation. And the Ministry of Education in Japan published guideline for artificial intelligence in education. And the African continent is home to the largest number of school children. And that's why we, Japanese teachers, educators, should be working with counterparts in Africa, and our potential would be limitless. And then that will provide us with precious opportunities to learn from them. So, of course, there are so many challenges in the continent, but there is so much potential. There's so much expectation. There's so much that we can do together. So for today's event, we had an opportunity to listen to their hands-on experience, very precious experiences during the speakers session. And we have TICAT meeting in August in Japan. And our focus has been on health, but I think there are so many things that we can do in the field of education. So together with you, we want to be pushing ahead our efforts and initiatives, and that will conclude this session. Thank you again for all the panelists and speakers. Thank you very much. Professor Suzuki, Professor Kitamura, and all the speakers and panelists, thank you so much for your contribution.